Our final guest today is the lovely James Governor. He's an analyst and co-founder of RedMonk. And RedMonk pride themselves on their relationship with developers, the fact that they understand developers. So they've really dialed into this kind of global developer community and the pulse of what's going on there. I'd advise everyone to really pay attention to this. The stuff that James says tends to be influencing developer CVs for the next couple of years, so it really is worth your time. Over to James.
Hi, I'm James Governor from RedMonk, and I'm super excited to be here at SpringOne. Why am I excited about Spring? Because RedMonk is all about developers. So why developers, right? There's been a revolution in how IT happens over the last few years, where the developer is increasingly in control of decision-making. Obviously, you have top-down, but we're all about the bottom-up. And so what we look at is the kinds of decisions that developers are making, why and how they're making them, right? And so we're in this revolution where we've got like more self-service. We've got auto-scaling services so the developer doesn't have to spend all their time worrying about that. We've got rich ecosystems of services that they can bring together. We've got like less reinvention because somebody else has done the work to make the developer more productive. Why is that important? Because whether you're an enterprise, whether you're a SaaS company, whether you're a public cloud vendor, your success is going to be predicated on your ability to serve developers, serve modern developers, and help them to do their jobs more effectively. Because quite frankly, look, we're in a period of extreme transformation in all sorts of different angles and different focuses. And that's why it's so important to serve developers, serve them more effectively, and the platforms that are winning, that's exactly what we see. So we think about the cloud. We think about what's happening there. We've had a really interesting phenomenon, really grew up from containers. Obviously, Linux was the natural operating system of the cloud. But what happened was containers came along. It offered some advantages. Now, that only really became a thing with Docker because of that focus on developer experience. So Solomon was like, okay, look, I'm going to pull this stuff together and make a developer highly productive. They're going to be doing microservices. They're going to be doing CI/CD. They're going to be taking things, they're going to be throwing them away, spinning up new instances, and that whole package and everything required is going to be there for them as they do their software development. So of course, you got this idea of like, do it on the laptop and then deploy it on the cloud. That's where Kubernetes came in. So this was great. Kubernetes was definitely a powerful way of taking applications that were built and orchestrating them in these distributed systems. But of course, there was and is and remains a fair bit of complexity there. So while the Kubernetes community is like, wait, okay, we need to take that, we need to simplify, we need to work on developer experience, we need to start thinking about a separation of concerns around platform and around services. At the same time, Amazon came along and they were like, great, we could take these containers and build something called serverless. So this idea of like functions that you could build and services that could be basically composed a rich, as I say, service ecosystem. That's what happened with Amazon Lambda. And really, that is a profound change in terms of developers and productivity, and them having to worry far less about the surrounding infrastructure for building that service, whether that be scaling a database, whether that be calling authentication. That is the fundamental change. And so now we've got two competing and increasingly collaborating models of the world. One is serverless, and one is this Kubernetes world. And that's, I think, really where we are today. And let's think about services, and let's think about serverless and moving forward from there. So serverless was an Amazon phenomenon, I've said that, and obviously they have all of these things that you can call all sorts of batch jobs within the Amazon services themselves. But what if you want to use something else? What if you want to use something like Auth0 for your authentication? Or do you want to use Algolia for text search? Or you want to use Cloudinary to manage your media assets, your images and your videos? How do we pull that together? Quite interesting that the serverless community began to call that model serviceful. So serviceful is a way of thinking about the world where you're not tied into one public cloud, where it's all about that developer productivity, where developers are saying, right, I'm going to pull together this application-rich palette of services, and I'm going to have choice. But also we may want to have some ability to have state in that. So where do we go from there? How do we manage that persistence? What do the platforms look like? Because certainly the sorts of organizations that have adopted Kubernetes, many of them are thinking about state. That is something they're worried about. How do we manage that? So there's an interesting model that I just came across this. I wrote a tweet, and a guy called Mark Hinkle from Triggermouse said, "Wait, that's smokestacks. We've got serviceful, we've got Mashable, we've got open, composable." He's a Kubernetes guy, so C is done as a K, and event-driven. That event-driven thing is something to remember, I think, because what we're talking about is more reactive programming models. That was a good term, but then, of course, it being a tech industry, somebody's going to come up with another idea, and I think someone that really nailed it was Bob Muglia in his work now at FaunaDB, where he called it client serverless. Why is client serverless resonating for me in this model that I'm talking about? Because frankly, we've got richer clients. I mean, we've had the JavaScript revolution in the front end, and sure, we've got mobile clients, but definitely we've got very, very rich clients, interaction of these services at the back end. These services are managed and orchestrated by the front end as much as they are by that back end. This sort of gets back almost to a client-server kind of thinking, but as I say, of a rich set of services across a bunch of different platforms built by different folks. So let's talk a bit more about reactive and event-driven programming, because frankly, that is where this whole model really begins to make sense. And I think to me, that brings us around to Spring and where we are with Spring in 2020. So Spring has been a phenomenon for years. It's always been opinionated. It's always been about taking some of those developer jobs that are hard and making them easier. Doesn't it sound like some of the things I've been saying? Making less yak shaving for the developer. Don't worry about the class names. Don't worry about the database. We're going to manage all of that for you. And of course, this evolution that Spring has been on, they saw microservices. They saw containers. And it's like, okay, we need to move to Spring Boot. We need to make that easy. And frankly, the programming model needs to support that. And that's reactive programming. And certainly for the modern Spring developer, that is absolutely how they need to be thinking about building apps. Because that's what we're talking about. What's the call to action? What are you here for? Well, I know what you're here for. You're here to learn. Because frankly, developers, you've got to keep your skills fresh. There are always new platforms, all these new opportunities. And it's like, look, unfortunately, this year we can't be there in person. So we don't have a new Spring t-shirt. New skills, old t-shirt. That's what I want to see. Get your oldest Spring t-shirt, Interface 21, Spring Source, whatever it is. Why don't you wear it while you're learning? Put on the t-shirt, take a selfie, hashtag SpringOne, hashtag SpringT. I'd love to see it. I know the community would. See you then.